Hello, dear students. Welcome back to Booster Classes. This is Sushma Singh, and today I am back with the detailed analysis of another symbolic poem from First Flight book of Standard 10 CBSE. The name of this reflective poem is The Ball Poem, composed by John Berryman, an American poet and scholar. Trust me, students, this comprehensive study will surely help you perceive the core of this wonderful poem. So watch the video till the end and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. In this module, I will give you the essence of the poem in a very lucid manner so that you can learn with ease its theme, the style, and the tone, the in-depth explanation of each and every line, the poetic devices used in this profound poem, and of course, the comprehension check at the end. Before we move forward, let me give you a brief overview of this poem. As a matter of fact, this reflective poem can be interpreted both literally and metaphorically. Considering its literal meaning, we find that this poem is a heartfelt picture of the little boy growing up and learning to deal with the loss of his prized possession, that is a ball over here, and metaphorically it is about the loss of childhood and innocence, the reality which everyone has to face one day. And it also emphasized on the harsh reality of life that loss is a natural part of life. The underlying message of this profound poem is the significance of loss in life and coping with this loss, which is the life's biggest challenge. The poet here stresses on the fact that while grieving a loss is an inevitable part of life, we need to learn to come to terms with our grief. One has to be strong enough to stand up against the miseries and sorrow of life because life is precious and should not be wasted. Life has to be lived purposefully as well as fruitfully. Moving on with life is the only way to survive, and the realization of this truth makes people strong enough to fight the odd. As regards to the tone of the poem, we find that it is very depressing and melancholic in the beginning, whereas in the end, the tone changes to hopefulness because this poem gives an encouraging message. And concerning the style of the poem, we find that it is written in the free verse without any stanza division and rhyming scheme as this suits its tone and the content. Let's now proceed to the in-depth explanation of the first four lines. In literal sense, the poem begins with the depiction of a little boy losing his ball, a dearly prized possession of the boy, while playing in the street. Now, before the boy's very eyes, this ball bounces down the street, falls into the water, and goes away from the boy. Now, the poet is very curious to know about the boy's reaction on losing his ball. He further says that the boy is feeling so down and sense of loss has gripped him because this ball has been part of his life for a long time. He has both memories and emotion attached with it. Metaphorically, these lines may be interpreted as the pain of human life. Here, the poet is referring to our childhood phase, which we all treasure, but how we humans helplessly watch time snatching away from us our childhood. Lines 5 to 10 illustrate that when the young boy looked down at the water of the harbor, which had engulfed his treasured possession, the ball, he shook with grief and stood rigidly near the harbor for a long time and kept on looking for his lost ball. He was affected profoundly by this loss because not only did he have a deep emotional attachment with that ball, but also it was linked to the memories of the days when he played with the ball very happily. In the boy's life, that particular ball was irreplaceable. At that point of time, the poet felt that there would be no use in consoling the boy, saying that he could get a new ball or he could replace that ball with another ball. The little boy wanted to get back the same ball that he had lost. Now, student, this implies the spirit of the boy's childish innocence. You all must have seen that for children, a new or a costlier ball is of no value and they insist on getting their own ball. Here too, the poet felt the same. So, the poet didn't want to interfere with the boy's learning process. He wanted him to learn not only about the grief associated with the loss, but also how to overcome the grief and carry on with life. He would learn his first responsibilities, that is, to learn the responsibility of taking care of his things and to accept the harsh reality of life that loss is a natural part of life. Now, metaphorically, this can be compared to human life. In life, the loss of childhood phase, which is full of innocence and purity, is irreplaceable and leaves a permanent void in human life. The loss of childhood is accompanied by a deep sense of grief, despair, and helplessness, as the loss cannot be fulfilled. One can never get it back. One can never get the childhood back in lifetime. This is the real truth of life. We all have to accept the loss of childhood and move on in life. Lines 11 to 16 reveal that, despite being grief stricken, the little boy slowly began to come to terms with his loss and carry on with life. He had learned to value and preserve his cherished things. He had understood that loss is an essential and significant experience of one's life. Thus, he had learned to accept the loss. The poet then felt that in this materialistic world, worldly things which bring comfort and luxury in a life always get lost, and many a time these losses cannot be made up by money or by any replacement. Poet firmly believes that money can bring just external happiness by buying us possessions, but it can neither buy the sense of belongingness nor make us recover from the unhappiness due to loss of a valued thing. Metaphorically, these lines imply that when a child grows up, it understands that losing something doesn't mean that life is over. It is the nature of life that things are found and lost too. Nothing remains with us forever. So we have to accept the inevitability of loss, which is a part of our life. Certainly, once we lose our childhood, we cannot get it back. But instead of getting upset on losing our childhood phase, we should be happy by the advantages of growing up. Its loss is compensated with the gains of adulthood, that is, gaining individuality and maturity. Considering at the level of the deeper meaning of the concluding lines of the poem, we find that the poet feels that the boy, through his experience of losing his ball, he had learned an important lesson in life. That is, loss is an inevitable part of life. The little boy had also learned to cope up with grief associated with loss, no matter how much it hurts, because he had understood understood that grief is a natural part of the healing process. One has to be strong enough to stand up against the miseries and sorrow of life because life is precious and should not be wasted mourning over the loss. Moving on with life is the only way to survive, and the realization of this truth of life makes people strong enough to fight the odd. This, according to the poet, is a lesson that every human being must learn sooner or later in life and must apply many a time in the course of life in order to survive. This poem is noted for the remarkable use of various poetic devices which have effectively enhanced the beauty of this poem. In this line, students, you can find that all the literary devices used by the poet are mentioned along with explanation for your better understanding. You can simply note them down. Students, you can find that the poet has used anaphora in the first four lines. Imagery is used in the line merrily bouncing down the street. Repetitions of the words like what and balls are also there. Even you can see the poet has taken help of alliteration, assonance, enjambment, and symbolism, of course, because the ball itself represents childhood or possession in the poem. Here are a few important questions from the poem, and I would like you all to solve them so that you can enrich your understanding. I'm sure taking help from the explanation which I have just given, you will be able to get all the answers. Keep watching, keep learning, and yes, please don't forget to subscribe to and like my channel. Thank you.